Norway is often portrayed as one of the best places in the world to live. A wealthy country with enviable quality of life, near absolute security, and a social welfare system that the rest of the world envies. But what if I told you that this perfect image hides a dark side that few people know about? Behind the high salaries, clean streets, and exemplary democracy, there are secrets that don't appear in the tourist guides. The country that tops happiness and human development rankings also has a dark history of political scandals, social segregation, immigrant exploitation, and even a growing mental health crisis. And if you think Norway is a paradise of equality and justice, you might want to think twice. Despite its reputation as a progressive nation, Norway has one of the most controversial child protection systems in the world, accused of taking children from their families in an abusive manner, especially when it comes to immigrants and minorities. But there's more. Norway's oil, which is responsible for transforming the country into an economic powerhouse, carries a trail of environmental impacts and contradictions. While Norway presents itself as a sustainable country, its companies make billions from fossil fuel extraction. So, is Norway really the paradise it appears to be? Or is there a hidden side that no one likes to talk about? Let's dive into this fascinating country and uncover the truth behind the Nordic nation that captivates the world. Norway is a country of breathtaking landscapes, marked by gigantic fjords, snow-capped mountains, and dense forests. Located in northern Europe, in the Scandinavian region, it borders Sweden, Finland, and Russia, with a long coastline washed by the Atlantic Ocean. Its rugged geography and harsh climate have helped shape the Norwegian people, who are known for their resilience and strong connection to nature. With an area of 385,000 square kilometers, Norway is relatively large, but its population is small, with around 5.5 million inhabitants. Most people live in the south, in cities like Oslo, the capital, Bergen, and Trondheim, as the northern part of the country is extremely cold and sparsely populated. Speaking of cold, the Norwegian climate can be brutal, especially in the Arctic Circle region, where winter brings nights that last for entire months. But here's one of the most interesting points. The country is rich in natural resources, particularly oil and gas, which has helped transform Norway into one of the world's strongest economies. However, this same wealth has also created challenges, such as dependence on the oil industry and the growing inequality between native Norwegians and immigrants. And when we talk about Norway, we can't forget its strategic position in the Arctic. With the melting of the polar ice, new maritime routes are opening up, making the country even more influential in the geopolitical landscape. But did this wealth and stability always exist? To understand that, we need to go back in time and explore the history of a nation that was once home to the feared Vikings and went from being one of the poorest countries in Europe to one of the wealthiest in the world. Norway's history is a remarkable journey of transformation. The country that today is synonymous with wealth and quality of life was once one of the poorest in Europe, marked by brutal winters, famine, and a constant struggle for survival. But before all of this, Norway was a land of Vikings, the Nordic warriors who spread fear and terror across Europe. Between the 8th and 11th centuries, Norwegian Vikings dominated the seas, invading and plundering cities in England, France, and even the Mediterranean. In addition to their brutality, the Vikings were also skilled navigators and traders, leaving behind a cultural and historical legacy that still fascinates the world today. But this period of glory didn't last forever. In the 14th century, Norway entered a period of decline. The Black Death wiped out nearly half of the population, and the country was absorbed into a union with Denmark, losing its independence for centuries. During this time, Norway was relegated to a secondary position, without much political or economic influence. The turning point came in the 19th century. In 1814, after the collapse of the Napoleonic Empire, Norway managed to separate from Denmark and entered into a new union with Sweden. But the desire for independence did not disappear, and in 1905, the country finally became fully sovereign. However, the situation was still difficult. In the early 20th century, Norway was a poor country, relying on fishing and agriculture, and many Norwegians emigrated to the United States in search of better life. World War II brought one of the darkest moments in the country's history. In 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Norway, and the country lived under occupation for 5 years. Despite this, Norwegian resistance was strong, and after the war, the country began its economic recovery. But it wasn't until 1969 that the real revolution began. The discovery of oil in the North Sea changed Norway's destiny forever. Thanks to this unexpected wealth, the country heavily invested in social and economic development, creating one of the most advanced welfare systems in the world. But this meteoric rise also brought challenges, such as a dependency on the oil industry and a growing divide between traditional Norwegians and the new wave of immigrants. And it's precisely in this contrast between tradition and modernity that Norway becomes such a fascinating destination. Beyond its impressive history, the country is one of the most beautiful places in the world, attracting millions of tourists every year. And that's exactly what we'll explore now. If there's a country that feels like it came straight out of a fairy tale, it's Norway. With gigantic fjords, snow-covered mountains, crystal-clear lakes, and even the mesmerizing northern lights, the country is a true paradise for nature lovers. But despite all this beauty, traveling to Norway isn't for everyone. And we're not just talking about the extreme weather. Tourism in Norway is a dream for those seeking unique experiences. Norwegian fjords like Geirangerfjord and Narrowfjord are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, offering landscapes that seem almost unreal. Cruises through these natural formations are among the most popular activities for visitors. But be prepared to open your wallet because nothing in Norway comes cheap. Another major attraction is the Northern Lights, a stunning display of colorful lights dancing across the sky in the country's far north, especially from September to March. Tromsø and Alta are some of the best spots to witness this phenomenon, but once again, the cost of the trip can be a challenge for many tourists. For those seeking an even more extreme experience, there's the Svalbard Archipelago, one of the northernmost inhabited places on the planet. Here, nature rules, with polar bears, massive glaciers, and a sun that never sets in summer or never rises in winter. But this isolation comes at a price. Life in Svalbard is incredibly tough, and the effects of climate change are already visible with glaciers rapidly melting. The capital, Oslo, is a spectacle in itself. Modern, organized, and filled with museums and parks, the city reflects the country's wealth. But even here, there are contrasts. Despite the high standard of living, Norway is facing a concerning rise in homelessness and drug abuse in its major cities, which stands in stark contrast to its image as a perfect country. Norway has one of the most exclusive tourism sectors in the world, and it comes at a cost. Traveling to the country requires a hefty budget, and even Norwegians themselves complain about the high prices. But tourism isn't the only sector driving Norway's economy. In fact, the true strength of the country lies in something few nations possess in such abundance: oil and natural gas. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Norway is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and this didn't happen by chance. Unlike other European nations that grew through industry or trade, Norway had a stroke of luck: the discovery of oil in the North Sea in 1969. It was this black gold that transformed a previously poor, fishing-dependent country into a global economic powerhouse. Today, Norway is one of the largest exporters of oil and natural gas in the world, and much of this fortune is funneled into one of the largest sovereign wealth funds on the planet, the Government Pension Fund Global, which has accumulated over $1.5 trillion. This money is used to ensure the retirement of Norwegians and finance the country's generous welfare system. Free education, high-quality public health care, and impeccable infrastructure are just a few of the benefits of this wealth. But not everything is perfect. Despite the oil fortune, Norway has one of the highest costs of living in the world. The official minimum wage doesn't exist, but the average monthly income for a worker is around 50,000 Norwegian kroner, about $4,800. Sounds like a lot? Yes, but the expenses are equally absurd. Rent for an apartment in Oslo can exceed 15,000 kroner, $1,400 per month. A kilogram of meat can cost 300 kroner, $28, and a simple cup of coffee might set you back 50 kroner, $5. It's no wonder that even Norwegians often travel to Sweden to shop, where prices are much lower. And while the wealth from oil brought prosperity, it also brought dependency. Norway prides itself on being environmentally conscious, but at the same time, it makes billions exporting fossil fuels. This paradox has sparked international criticism and raises a question: what will happen when the oil runs out? Moreover, Norway's economy faces another serious issue: the growing inequality between natives and immigrants. While Norwegians enjoy high wages and a high standard of living, many immigrants struggle to land well-paying jobs and are often relegated to low-wage positions. This creates an increasingly evident social divide, something that contradicts the country's image as an egalitarian society. Speaking of inequality, Norway also faces other controversies that tarnish its reputation as a perfect nation. Political scandals, social segregation, and a controversial child protection system are part of the Norwegian reality. And that's exactly what we'll uncover now. Despite its reputation as a perfect country, Norway has a dark side that few people know about. Corruption, social segregation, a controversial child protection system, and even a worrying rise in crime are starting to tarnish the image of this Nordic nation. One of the most controversial issues in the country is the Barnevernet, Norway's child protection system. Created to ensure the safety of children at risk, the agency has been accused of abusing its power by removing children from their parents without clear justification. Several foreign families living in Norway have reported that their children were taken for trivial reasons, such as cultural differences in upbringing or allegations of abuse, without concrete evidence. This issue has gained international attention, with protests in various countries and criticism even from the United Nations. Another growing problem in Norway is social segregation. Despite the discourse of equality, immigrants face difficulties integrating into Norwegian society. Many end up trapped in a kind of social ghetto with low-paying jobs and little upward mobility. In some cities, like Oslo, entire neighborhoods are dominated by immigrant communities living on the margins of society, creating cultural and political tensions. Speaking of crime, while Norway has one of the lowest rates of violence in the world, some crimes have shocked the country and revealed a darker side of Norwegian society. The most emblematic case was that of terrorist Anders Breivik, who in 2011 killed 77 people in a brutal attack motivated by extremist ideologies. The massacre shook the country and revealed that even in one of the world's most peaceful nations, hatred can grow in the shadows. Additionally, the growing mental health crisis among young Norwegians has been drawing attention. Despite living in one of the world's most developed countries, more and more young people are struggling with depression and anxiety, raising the question: is the pressure to be perfect coming at too high a price? Norway may be a model for the world, but it is far from perfect. The country faces challenges that threaten its stability and future. But is there hope for change? Will Norway manage to balance its wealth with its problems? Now, let's discuss what might lie ahead for this Nordic nation. Despite all the controversies and challenges, Norway remains one of the most advanced countries in the world. Its social system is still one of the most efficient. Its economy remains strong, and its population enjoys an enviable quality of life. But that doesn't mean the country is immune to problems. The growing inequality between Norwegians and immigrants, the controversy surrounding Barnevernet, the dependence on oil, and the mental health crisis are issues that can no longer be ignored. Norway has built its reputation as a country of opportunity and social justice. But the future will tell if it can maintain this balance or if the cracks in the system will continue to grow. The good news is that Norwegian society is highly engaged. Protests against injustices, intense political debates, and a youth that is increasingly connected show that there is a growing awareness of the country's challenges. If there's a place in the world where change can happen in an organized and efficient way, it's Norway. The future of this Nordic nation is still being written, and one thing is certain. While Norway may have its dark secrets, its ability to reinvent itself may determine whether it will continue to be a model for the world or simply another country facing its own contradictions.